Adam Cherry, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you. Let's kick off then with the Gorton and Denton by-election. You were up there, I think, yesterday.
No, so I actually recorded that on last Friday.
Oh, did you? Okay.
It went out a couple of days ago.
Right.
And then obviously since then, such a sod's law, right? We did that on Friday, and then on Monday, Starmer finally shows up, and then last night, obviously polls open today, and then last night you had Angela Rayner there as well.
Right.
So my impression, if you watch the video, which you can find on YouTube and on Guido Fawkes' website, my impression was hunting around the constituency basically all day. It was a two-horse race between the Greens and Reform.
Right.
And we spoke to Matt Goodwin, the Reform candidate, and he said basically the same thing. Obviously, he would say that. He's not going to say, I think I'm in trouble with Labour, obviously.
Right.
But then on Monday onwards, there was actually a bit of a shift in campaign and sort of attitude from Reform. So you've now got Farage himself, you've got a couple of the leading lights of Reform saying, hi, hang on a minute, expectation management protocols have been activated. So I don't know if Labour are seeing their internal data is a little bit rosier than the on-the-ground picture. But when I was there, it was very, very easy to find Green Party campaign literature everywhere, signs absolutely everywhere.
I mean, I know a couple of people who are up there who've been reporting into me saying things like, you can't move for Green Party literature. Everywhere you go, there's green posters in windows, particularly in the kind of Muslim areas of the constituency. It's all about the Green Party. And also, I spoke to Nick Buckley the other day because he wanted to come back on the show because he came on a couple of weeks ago. And I said, to be honest, I don't mind having you back on, but, I haven't had Matt Goodwin on, so I feel like I should have Matt Goodwin on before I have you on. But we can't get hold of Matt Goodwin. I mean, I don't know why. Yeah, he didn't want to. I mean, we've tried to get him on, and he hasn't come on. And I'm thinking, well, that's a bit weird. I mean, we've got a massive audience here. Most of the people that watch this show are probably likely to vote Reform, more than anything else, right? Yeah. And yet they're sort of they seem a bit disparate with their campaign, and I think the problem for Reform is that Matt Goodwin's not that great of a candidate. And I think I think Reform sort of en masse have gone up there today to be out there sort of banging on doors and getting the vote out. But I think you're right. I mean, it looks like the Greens are kind of in pole position, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Labour activists who didn't want to appear on camera, and fine. But I said, well, what's the ground game like? What are you hearing? What are you doing about this? Right. And they all said, actually, if you look at the data, blah, 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 fine. The undecideds, they hope, are going to swing back home and go back to Labour. Right. And the way they're going to do that is, or the way Labour are going to try and engineer that is by relying on Andy Burnham, who obviously Mayor of Greater Manchester, greater context being that he was supposed to, or tried to get that seat, forced out, so on. So they're relying on him to enter the surgeries in those small groups of 12, 15 voters and make the pitch. So he's kind of the de facto head of this campaign, even if he's not on the ballot. Right. And obviously it's a win-win for him, really. Because their candidate's a bit odd, isn't she? She's like Greek or something? Yeah, so we did we posted a story last week. I'd like to reshare it and hope it gets a bit more attention. It's interesting. She was in Hustings and the question was asked, do you support the Supreme Court notion on single-sex basis, which obviously sex means biological sex. Right. She didn't raise her hand, so she's very wishy-washy on those issues, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, not enough people, I think, noticed that. So yeah, he is the de facto head of this campaign, and if they lose, he gets to say, well, look, should have been me, shouldn't it? Told you so. And if they win, he gets the lion's share of the credit. I mean, I said this at the time, and I said it to Kelvin McKenzie, who was here yesterday. Andy Burnham, probably amongst everyone, sort of heaved a huge sigh of relief when he was blocked from becoming the candidate, because there was a no-win situation there. Because if he'd won the seat, he would have no longer had the kind of the kudos of being Mayor of Manchester. Yeah. And if he'd lost it, he would have had no job at all. Yeah. Because he wouldn't be able to be Mayor of Manchester either. Correct. He's really tried to cultivate this Manchester Labour brand, which is what the activists said. They didn't attribute it to him specifically, but who else is there? So they're saying the Manchester Labour is very strong, implicitly saying it's distinct from the Westminster car crash. So they hope that he will that his sort of magical powers will rub off on the campaign, and then at the 11th hour, these undecideds and some postal votes come in, and Labour can swing it. Yeah, but like I have to say, I went up there, a lot of journalists have been up there. We're not seeing that, but it doesn't mean it's not necessarily true. I would be surprised. I still think the Greens polls obviously can be wrong. Yeah, but again, Nick Buckley said to me, he said, Labour are doing a lot better than anyone thinks they're doing.
which could be true, but equally, it's one of their 4 or 5 best, safest seats. So they should be doing well.
Of course.
But I mean, I guess the fallout for me is that if Labour lose it, doesn't really matter whether they come second or third or fourth.
Yeah.
They've lost one of their safest seats.
Yeah.
And you can't really see them doing any other than that.
No, I mean, it just proves that there is no such thing as a Labour safe seat anymore, whatever the result really.
Yeah.
And, they won 50% of the vote, more than that, in 2024, so 18 months ago. And the previous incarnations of the seat, boundary changes and so on, they've been there for generations.
Yeah.
So if they can't win there, what are they doing?
But it does happen. I mean, I saw it happening in Scotland. Years ago, I used to work up there for the Mirror, and Glasgow, you would have said, will be Labour for the rest of its, eternity. But suddenly, even though it was such a safe seat, let's not forget. I mean, even in Gordon Brown's time, the Labour government would always imagine that they would get about 48 to 50 Scottish seats, right? And then they lost them all to the SNP because in the end, what happened was that they didn't do anything for the people. The poorest parts of Glasgow were still the poorest parts of Glasgow, despite decades of Labour government. George Robertson, who ended up running NATO, was the MP for Grangemouth, which was where the big petrochemical company was and all that. And he did great things for them. But even he lost his seat in the end because people were like, well, what have you done for me lately?
Of course. The other thing about by-elections is they can produce quirky results because you can punish the government voting for the other guy without actually changing the government. So it's like a slap on the wrist, get your act together. Now, it might be different this time. Certainly looks like all the winds are pointing in a different direction. But that certainly doesn't help Labour either, even if we're in the land of milk and honey, which we're not.
But if Hannah Spencer, who is the Green candidate, can be elected in this seat, you have to wonder what the hell is going to happen in the next 3 years, because she's hopeless. I mean, useless and completely and utterly a sort of sham candidate. And yet, if she wins, it will mean that they could literally you can put that plant up as a Green candidate and it would get in.
Yeah, to be fair, that's been the case in Westminster for quite some time, hasn't it? It's like, here's another one. We report on these wrong ones all day long.
Yeah.
I mean,
but she is particularly bad, though, isn't she?
I mean, well, the Green campaign there is sectarian, right? So they're campaigning for the Muslim vote. I mean, we did a video that got... the Urdu video that got 3 million views or something.
And then they did one in Bangor, because I put a rather rude tweet out about Zach Polanski, which involved quite a few swear words, and he sort of came back with, wait till you see the Bangla version.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like, what? What is going on?
Yeah, and you see that the seat is so odd. Journalists have been reporting on this for some time, but to see it in person, it is a sort of Frankenstein seat of two halves. Gorton, high Muslim population. Denton, very high white working class. And it's like, two universes apart when you speak to them, what they care about. Obviously, one side Gaza, the other immigration. Who wins
And I wonder how much of that sort of repeats itself nationally, in the sense that you've got so many parts of Britain, like Gorton, where they've got a big Muslim population and a big immigrant population. And then other areas which are very white. I mean, for example, my kids grew up in Sussex. I go down there at the weekends, and Sussex is nothing like London. You walk through the streets of even Hastings, which is a reasonably big town, and you wouldn't see anything other than a white face for hours, And yet in London, I could walk around parts of London and not see anybody white for hours as well,
Yeah, I mean, the integration issues are serious, because why are they campaigning in Urdu and Bangla?
Right.
You think if communities are integrating successfully, everyone would speak the same language.
Yeah, right.
So
ideally English, really.
Yeah,
since
of course.
You're living in England.
That's a general principle wherever you are. Like I said, I think it will be a nail biter, and it's been really interesting just to see the change in the language from Reform's campaign, which suggests that the data and what they're hearing on the ground is changing, or they're nervous enough to start softening the blow a little bit.
So if people are wanting to sit up late tonight to watch the results coming in, I mean, in terms of just practicalities, is it going to be so tight that you won't know for quite a long time? Or how soon do you think we'll know?
Yes, the polls close at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
God, I reckon they're counting votes. There might be recounts. It might be like Runcorn. Carefully as well. That was a close one. Not quite. Runcorn was 6 votes.
Yeah.
Could be like that.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard to tell. So I reckon that this is if you want to stay up, it might be a 6 a.m.
Yeah, I don't think I can do it. Pooch, what do you reckon? I mean, should we do a live show? Well, because I mean, Pooch gets up at 2:00 in the morning anyway. So we maybe just come in early and just do the whole thing.
Mate,
could be fun. I'll bring the brandy. And what about the result in terms of what it means for people? Because there will be plenty of critics of reform. Dan Hodges wrote a piece the other day in which he said, if reform don't win, it's bad news for Nigel Farage. I don't really think that's true. No. Because I think that reform, given the history of this particular seat, if reform comes second to the Greens, they'd be pretty happy with that, wouldn't they?
I think so, yeah. I think if they'd had a slightly stronger campaign and, whatever you think of Matt Goodwin, if you had someone who was obviously more...
He's not a great candidate, is he?
I spoke
let's be
to
honest.
I spoke to him and he was saying, door knocking every day and all this, fine. I think the damage is not fatal, but it's a bit like Keir Phillips. Hang on, there's a little bit of a trend here. You're going in quite confident and then not quite getting over the line.
Yeah.
But then you've got May the 7th when they probably will do very, very well, and it becomes yesterday's news.
Yeah.
So who knows? I think Dan Hodges has slightly overrated that, to be honest.
Well, I think he would say that, wouldn't he? It's one of those, isn't it? But the thing with Matt Goodwin that I found, and I don't know Matt terribly well. I mean, I know him a little bit. I've spoken to him a couple of times. But, for me, when he did that thing on the top of the bus, where he went, Keir Starmer talks like a robot, and you go, well, so do you. That's not really a very good line of attack if you also talk like a robot.
If you're going to do that, you've got to have the charisma of like a Barack Obama or something.
Yeah, you've got to be Nigel
Trump
Farage.
Or a Farage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You can't go, you're a bit wooden. Yeah, well, so are you. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And also, where was that bus going? Because it looked like it was driving around his campaign area, which is an industrial estate. Yeah. I don't know. If you're going to do that, it's got to be razzle and fireworks. Yeah. Wasn't quite that.
And so I think but I mean, again, this is the problem reform's going to have, isn't it? Because they'll always be looking for candidates who are, 1, charismatic, 2, capable, 3, not nutters, 4, hadn't been members of the BNP, all of those things that they have to be really, really careful about. And I can't imagine how they can find, which they will have to do, obviously, before the next general election, hundreds of these people.
They've got to find 650 odd people. Actually, it's more than that, because if they win and they get into government, because of the makeup of the House of Lords, they have no peers.
Right.
So there's another unspoken issue.
I mean, last time I was down at their HQ, which was some months ago, they had this big whiteboard up there, which had a number on it for the number of councillors they had to find. It was something like 5,500 councillors. And you're kind of going... It's not even possible to vet all of those people. You're bound to get people who are going to be, wrong-uns, crazies, nutters,
And you get that. You do get that. Also, I mean, he will say, to be fair to him, that happens across all the other parties. But unfortunately for reform, they get more scrutiny. That's the way it is. Deal with the card you're dealt. That's it.
Right. And I mean, it's probably unfair to judge them on this, but the Tories are not even getting a mention in this election at all, are they?
No, they might not even
I don't know. They might lose the deposit.
No, I was going to say, they might lose their deposit. In fact, I haven't checked the odds recently, but the Advance UK, the bookies, were doing better than the Conservatives.
Right.
You get shorter odds betting on Advance UK than you do the Conservative Party. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And how dangerous do you think they are to reform, and how dangerous is Restore Britain to reform? I mean, obviously not in this election as such, but in general terms.
Yeah, but if they continue, they are. I think there are some jitters internally at reform because, no, they're not going to form the next government. But, if you're splintering the right in 12 different directions in a first-past-the-post system, a few votes here and there can mean a lot of seats. Yeah. Particularly in all these seats in the north where reform came second last time. Right. Think about Runcorn where they won it by 6 votes. Right. This stuff can happen. Look at what might happen today. So if Restore have 7 or 8% of the vote, whatever, that can be seriously damaging, for a general election campaign. Right.
And I mean, as far as the future of Rupert Lowe is concerned, he's being treated by his fans as kind of, messiah figure, messianic kind of, character who's got all the great ideas, he should be Prime Minister, But I mean, I don't see it really. I just don't see him becoming anything other than a bit of a pain in the arse, really, to reform.
I think if you care about ideas, right, so if you're principled about right-wing politics, which he and everyone else in these parties would say they are, well, then this is not the correct strategy. I think egos are involved. Because in what universe does Rupert Lowe realistically do anything other than, as I say, damage reform or the Tories or whatever, and then allow a left-wing insurgency? So look, I think, whatever the truth is between him and Farage, they had a big falling out. Both sides want to prove they're correct.
Yeah.
And so you have this sort of soap opera playing out, and who really wins, but Labour or Greens?
I know. It's kind of strange. And what about the final question, I suppose, about Starmer's longevity?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't, believe that he's still there, because he's got sort of balls of steel, it would seem, where he doesn't, anybody normal would have just walked away and gone, this can't literally get any worse, right?
Yeah, I've heard, ministers were saying privately, there was an hour or two there, I think it was about 90 minutes, where they thought, well, this is it. Right. He is going to fall. So only when,
was this before or after Mandelson?
After, it was when Anasawa was...
calling for him to go, yeah.
When Anasawa pulled the trigger, they thought, that's it.
Right.
Actually then, through, I think, a series of deliberate phone calls from head office to the right people, suddenly, the cabinet rallied around. Look, how long can he last? Well, if he wins today, huge boost for his leadership until May the 7th. And then that's the crucial point.
And that's kind of the bottom.
Yeah. They're completely wiped out. All these MPs, there's no whipping operation amongst Labour MPs anymore, because they have slim majorities. Most of them know they're not going to win the next election, right? So why bother being disciplined? We might as well govern from the backbenches whilst we're here and try and make some impact. And if they keep losing, that sentiment only gets stronger and his position only gets weaker.
Right. So and every single sort of decision that he's made since he became Prime Minister has been reversed, And the economy. But even yesterday in PMQs, he's banging on about, the economy's improving, people are spending more money in the high street. I'm going to go, sorry, what? None of it. None of the things that he says are even true now. Yeah, you just think, you must know you're talking bollocks.
Of course, you speak to, this is what's interesting again about Gorton and Denton. You go up there and you speak to people and you say, what about Starmer?
Yeah.
And they say, don't trust him, talking nonsense, U-turns on everything. The guy has absolutely no credibility left amongst voters whatsoever. Right. They might do okay with the graduate class in London, but even then, they're going to go to the Greens half of them. Yeah. So, MPs are going to think, okay, there's no immediate successor right now, but once Angela Rayner's tax affairs, if they're cleared up, clear runway for her, Ed Miliband propping her up, and they all think 0% chance of winning with Starmer, maybe 5%, 10% with Rayner, go for it.
Yeah. Extraordinary times we're living in. Amazing. But, it keeps us busy. Can't complain.
It certainly does.
There's no sort of... You don't wake up in the morning and go, there's a bit of a sea of calm. I don't know what I'm going to talk about today. It's completely insane, isn't it?
This was what was supposed to happen after 2024. You saw all those videos, all these journalists saying, milk and honey from the taps, isn't this great? Right. Finally, calmness, stability, let how that was.
Yeah. Well, do you remember, what's his face, Andrew Marr?
Yeah.
On Question Time.
Yeah.
Finally the grown-ups are in charge, we'll have some proper government. Yeah. What a complete and utter plank that guy is.
Yeah.
He should literally hurl himself off the Clifton suspension bridge for being so useless. But there we are. Adam Cherry, great to see you. For Guido Fawkes. Check it out if you haven't seen it, if you haven't watched and subscribed to Guido Fawkes. It's got to be the greatest parliamentary and political gossip website for all the stuff you need to know about the way that this country is going. Of course, as we say, it is the Gorton and Denton by-election today. We're not supposed to talk about it according to Ofcom. Well, they can piss off as well.